Hello, I'm Manucher. As I'm telling you this story now, exactly 37 years have passed since that cursed night. It's snowing outside. Slowly, just like that cursed night. Gnome laughed and said, "Grandpa, you always say you don't like snow, so what are you staring at?" He was right. Me? Ever since that cursed night, every time it snows, a strange fear settles deep inside me.
Hello, I'm Morteza, and welcome to the Voices Under Dark channel. Let's get to tonight's story. But before we start, if you can, please give the video a like so I can get some energy from you. Let's get to the story.
I'm from Karaj, and ever since I was young, I've been behind the wheel. After years of working as an assistant and a driver for others, I finally managed, with a lot of effort, loans and help from my family, to buy a Kavar truck for myself. It was one of those beautiful orange Kavar trucks. That truck wasn't just a vehicle to me. It was a symbol of my success and the result of all my hard work. I had finally become my own boss and was in charge of my own work. It had been 2 or 3 years since I got married. God had blessed me with a beautiful daughter named Mariam. After getting married, everything was going well for me. I was able to buy a very small 50 square meter house for myself, so I no longer had to worry about moving every year. I had an apprentice named Rahim. Rahim was 27 years old. We were old friends and grew up in the same neighborhood. He had gotten married too. He had a little boy named Nafid. Whenever we were on the road, he would talk to me about his family and how much he missed them. I always told him, "Rahim, this road and this job won't lead to anything good. For you. This job is dangerous, brother. Look for something else." But he would just laugh at me. And he would say, "Uncle Manucher, the taste of honest bread is in this dust and dirt of the road. I myself love being a driver." It was late autumn when there was an urgent delivery. We had to get the cargo to the north quickly. Back then, working in Naushar was really tough for us, and there was no such thing as day or night. But we needed the money. I had to come up with the payments for my sister's installments, and I also had several debts to acquaintances that I'd taken on to buy a house. These thoughts were like fuel that kept me going on the road and made me try even harder. That day, the weather was very cold. I remember it clearly. It was late autumn of 1988, and when we left Tehran, it was close to sunset. It was night when we reached the Chalus road. All we could see was the dark, winding path ahead of us. It was around 8:30 or 9 when the weather started to change. Rahim, who was sitting next to me, was dozing off and listening to music. He woke up with my voice. I told him, "Rahim, get up. The weather is turning bad." Light snow had started, but in less than half an hour it changed. It turned into a heavy, relentless snow. Back then, even the snow was different from now. The snow got so intense that you could barely see ahead. I had to slow down so we wouldn't run into trouble, and the road had become slippery too. I was getting stressed out. It wasn't like today, where everyone has a cell phone in their pocket. You couldn't find a living soul on the road back then. If something happened, it was just you and yourself. You had to survive until morning on your own. You had to wait until someone came to rescue you. Rahim, worried, said to me, "Uncle Manucher, what if we get caught?" I slammed my hand on the steering wheel in frustration and said, "Don't plant the seed of fear in my heart, brother. Let's just do our job." As I was driving, still stressed out, after a few sharp turns and heavy snow, suddenly, in the midst of that darkness and blizzard, I saw a pale light. A small wooden sign that read, "Coffee House and Inn, a night gathering spot." There was a small parking lot next to the inn, showing only a beat-up blue Nissan and 2 old model Paycans parked there. A few other travelers had also gotten stuck there that night. Reluctantly, I parked the car. Rahim, shivering from the cold, said, "Uncle, let's stay here for a few hours and see what happens." We got out of the car, snow hitting our faces, and the first thing that struck me was the strange and unusual smell in the air. It smelled like burnt gasoline. We opened the wooden door and went inside. Behind the door there was an old man holding a sickle. His face looked strange, both mysterious and frightening. He was completely different from the ordinary people I had seen. In a scary, quiet voice that sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well, he asked, "What do you need? What can I bring you?" I told him, "For now, we're just freezing from the cold. Bring us some tea and a hookah so we can see what the weather's going to do, whether we can continue on our way or if we have to spend the night here." That old man, whose name I later learned was Nagi, left without saying a word. He headed toward a large copper samovar, which was by the wall. Rahim went over to the wood stove and started warming his hands. The tea house was small. A few old wooden tables and chairs, cement walls that looked like they'd just been painted, but still somehow felt damp. It ran along the wall and looked ugly. Outside, a few small rugs were spread out on the ground. That strange smell hit again. It went up Rahim's nose as he was warming himself. He quietly said, "Uncle Manushir, what's that awful smell in here? Is it coming from here? It's those old incense things they burn in mosques." After a few minutes, Nagi came back to us with a tray holding 2 cups of tea and a hookah. He set the tea in front of us and put the hookah on the ground. The tea was strangely strong and dark. We packed the hookah, set it on the table, and had just started looking around as we smoked. We were enjoying ourselves. There was no one else in the hall. I asked, "Sir, what's your name?" He said, "I'm Nagi." I said, "Mr. Nagi, whose cars are those in the parking lot? Where are the other guests?" Nagi, who was folding a white towel, answered without looking up, "Those," normalized, "false, are older guests. They've gone to their rooms to rest." Rahim said, "Uncle, I don't think we can continue on the road tonight. Look outside. It's blizzarding. The snow is getting heavier. It's better if we get a room and just sleep here tonight." I was so exhausted I felt like I was dying, and I realized there was no point in waiting. The snow kept coming. It was getting heavier by the minute. Continuing on would be playing with our lives. I told Nagi, "All right, then give us a room until morning when the weather gets better. We'll stay here with you." Nagi handed over the key without saying a word, on the wooden table. Then, in that same scary voice, he said, "The room is upstairs, on the left." I asked him how much the rent would be. He said, "It's nothing worth mentioning. We'll settle up tomorrow. Just go upstairs and try not to make too much noise. The other guests are sleeping." We took the key and headed out. On the way to the room, in the hallway between the coffee house and the stairs, there was a coat rack. A worn-out leather jacket was hanging on it. It was one of those new styles that only the rich wore back then, and underneath it was a pair of clean leather boots. Rahim quietly whispered in my ear, "Look at these boots. They're top of the line. Where do you think their owner has gone? In this snow, what do you think?" For a moment I felt a pang of doubt in my heart. Honestly, in all my time in Alaman, I'd never seen a coffee house with this name on the Chalus Road. I told myself maybe it was just built recently, so I let it go. I was so tired that I preferred not to think anything bad and just go get some rest. We went up the stairs and reached our designated room. The inside of the room was very ordinary. There were 2 metal beds with 2 old mattresses. On top of them were old blankets that looked more like military blankets. There was a kerosene heater in the corner of the room, but they hadn't even bothered to turn it on. The room had a small window, and its glass was fogged up. I wiped the condensation away and looked outside. It was snowing heavily. Rahim, shivering from the cold, pulled the blanket over himself and said, "Uncle, I'm going to sleep. I'm both very tired and cold." I went and turned on the heater. I was really tired too. I took off my shoes and collapsed onto the bed. All I managed to do was take off my shoes. At first everything was quiet. Only the sound of the wind howling through the window could be heard. Occasionally, there was also the sound of something tapping from the ceiling. My eyes were slowly getting heavy when a very faint sound came. It was like a whisper, not very clear, but not so vague that you could call it your imagination. Rahim also sat up at that moment and said, "Uncle, do you hear the sounds too?" I said, "Go to sleep, dear, it's just the wind." But only a few minutes had passed before those sounds came again. This time, it was closer, as if it was coming from inside the hallway, a soft sound of something opening and closing. It was as if something else was there too. It was tapping on the door. Then the whispering sounds grew louder. My heart was pounding with fear. I sat up on the bed, my ears straining to listen. Rahim quietly pulled the blanket over his head and said, "Swear to God, Sherkan, these sounds aren't normal." For a few seconds there was no sound, then the whispering started again. This time it was a bit clearer. "What does he want here? Get out of here." Then the sound at the door came again. Very softly, as if someone was knocking from outside. I wanted to get up and open the door. At that moment there was a gentle knock on the door, as if someone was there this time. Someone was knocking on our door. Both of us froze. The knocking sound came again, this time louder. I shouted, "Who is it? Aga Nagi, is that you?" There was no answer. I got up and opened the door, but there was no one behind it. Rahim was so scared his face had turned pale. He said, "Uncle, what do you think is going on here?" I closed the door and sat on the bed. I said, "Let's talk for a few minutes." We tried to distract ourselves by talking, but then we heard another sound from behind the door. This time, it was a rustling noise. Rahim started quietly reciting prayers under his breath, his hands shaking with fear. He was trembling. I said, "Be quiet, boy," but I myself was speechless. Fear had completely taken over me. There were sounds coming from the ceiling, as if several people were walking on the roof above our room. As we sat on the bed, straining our ears to listen, the rustling sound didn't stop. Damn it, it kept getting louder and louder. It was as if the sound was circling around the room. Then that sound came right above us. There was a rustling noise from the ceiling, as if someone was gently sanding it. Rahim, scared again, pulled the blanket over himself. With a terrified voice he said, "Sherkan and I swear there's someone up there. They live here better than us." I was about to open my mouth and calm him down when suddenly everything went quiet. Only the sound of the kerosene heater could be heard. Rahim quietly said, "Uncle, maybe we were just imagining things. Maybe it was just the exhaustion from the road. Maybe you were hallucinating." I was also trying to convince myself that everything was normal. I was about to get up and go downstairs to have another cup of tea to calm myself, pull myself together and stand up, but my foot slipped again and the room light went out once, and then I felt a sharp pain in the back of my calf as I hit the ground. I felt myself cry out. In those few seconds, gasping for breath, and that his face had turned blue and his eyes were full of terror on the back of my neck. He said to me, "Uncle, what are these? Completely cold. Let's swear on the Quran. If we wait any longer, it won't be many of us alive." That this was no longer a place for us to stay. I didn't wait for any more explanations. It would have been. There was only one thought spinning in my head at night at my sister's. We had to escape from there no matter what. With all the strength and misery we had, we rushed out of the room. Door to the room was still open with a violent lights were off, slamming against were coming from everywhere. I jumped out of my skin and from the stairs. It was as if someone was quietly laughing at us. Something was standing in the doorway. As we were running and trying to escape, I saw that the door to one of the rooms was holding my breath. A hand was sticking out through the crack, but I was so scared. It was a corpse, my eyes completely swollen. Suddenly, I got hit wanted to look at the chest, but I pulled him away and said, the floor. "Don't look, couldn't just run. If we don't hurry, it was as if someone had punched me hard right in the chest." We made it to the downstairs hall of the coffee house. Rahim got up in fear to run away. Where just a few hours ago we had been sitting, drinking tea and smoking hookah without a care in the world. But now everything was completely different. Grabbed him and threw him toward the wall. In the middle of the hall, I heard some of his bones breaking. A man of about 40, his face turned to the ground and was lifted into the air. One of his hands was trapped under his body, while the other was stretched out in front of him, as if he had been trying to escape in his final moments. He seemed to be struggling to get away. His eyes were still open. The strange thing was that his entire hand was bruised. There were also a number of small wounds on his face. Rahim burst into tears. I realized that if we stayed here, we would be next. Suddenly, we heard a loud scream. I was so scared I was about to wet myself. I grabbed Rahim by the collar. I pulled him toward the exit. But no matter how hard we tried, the door wouldn't open. That damn door was locked. I slammed my shoulder against the door. I kicked the door. We tried everything. That door just wouldn't open. Behind us, the sounds kept getting closer and closer, and even the breathing was getting heavier. Suddenly, I got hit hard in the back again. My face slammed into the door and my mouth filled with blood. I could taste iron everywhere, in my whole mouth. I don't know what happened to Rahim, but he went down too, to the ground. A trail of blood was running down from above his eyebrow. No matter how I tried to describe it so you can understand the fear in that place, I just can't explain it exactly. What happened to us? We looked in every direction. A terrifying shadow with glowing eyes was staring right at us. To be more clear, those shadows were jinn. With every passing moment, we were feeling a new pain. Blood was coming from my head and hand. I had no idea where I had been hit or what I had run into. I got up again. With my last bit of strength, I grabbed the handle and turned it. As if by God's help, a locked door suddenly burst open with a terrifying sound, and a wave of snow and cold hit us, right in our faces. Without looking back, we ran out of the coffee house, the snow coming up to our knees. The cold was bone-chilling, but we managed to escape from there. We just kept running, kept falling down, and getting back up again. I threw myself behind the wheel and tried to start the car several times, but it wouldn't start. Rahim, his body bruised, jumped in and we kept trying to start it. Finally, after countless tries, the car started up with a strange roar. The moment we started moving, I saw a shadow standing by the tea house door in the mirror. It didn't move, nor did it come any closer. It was just watching us. It was alive, but I don't know why that night it spared us. The lights went out as if it never even existed there. No matter how many times we looked back, there wasn't a single building there for several kilometers ahead. None of us could talk to each other. We still couldn't process what had happened. All we could hear was the sound of the car engine and our own breathing. The air was filled with it. My body was covered in pain and bruises. We survived that night full of wounds, but the shock stayed with us for a long time. Rahim spent a few days in the hospital. His teeth were cracked and his body was covered in bruises. I also couldn't breathe properly for weeks. Every time my chest hurt, I would always remember that hard punch that some supernatural force landed on me in that room. We never told anyone exactly what we saw that night. No one had ever seen that coffee house before or even heard its name. After that night, I never stayed on the road at night again. When it snows, he absolutely refuses to take any fares, even if the pay is several times higher than on normal days. For years, I haven't set foot on the Chalous road. Even after all these years, some nights when a whisper or a soft voice comes, I wake up from my sleep. Up until now, only my family members know the story of that night. Now you, too, are part of that terrifying incident we experienced on that cursed night in the north. My son always tells me, "Dad, you've seen a lot of scary things during your time as a driver." You see, I just smile at him, because if I told you about some of the things I've seen, you'd definitely say I've gone crazy, and I'm hallucinating. I shared this story not to scare you, but just in case one night you get stuck in the middle of the road in the snow and cold, and you see a sign that says, "If you see a roadside inn, be suspicious and think twice before going in." Remember that. Some places just aren't meant to be stayed in. Thank you for listening to my story.